In this one we'll be creating this simple login page. It's an animated login page. There are some basic hover effects given at the buttons and at the social links. And when you click here to the sign up, this little window will slide to the left, opening this sign up menu. And you can do this back and forth, so it's a really simple animation, but looks really cool. And it's also fully responsive. To switch between these, you just say don't have an account yet, and then it will pop you the sign up page, or already have an account and it will pop you the welcome back page. It will require a little bit of HTML, CSS and JavaScript, but overall it's going to be simple to build. Let's get started. So getting started here, I do have an index.html, a style.css and a script.js created. We have a title given and we do have our style.css linked. Also, we have our script.js linked at the end of our body, and we also have a font of some link at the end of our body because we'll be using font of some for those little social icons. You could also use downloaded SVGs if you prefer that. The way you get that link for yourself is obviously by going to font of some, registering there, and then you can choose from a whole lot of images, and then you can do the same syntax that we do here, which will be the font of some syntax, which will let you use the icons in code really easily. But let that be the least of your worries, and let's jump into our HTML. First, I'd like to create a div with the class container. This will be the container that holds all of the things together. Then I'd like to also create a div with the class sign in and with the ID sign in. This is a syntax that you can use to do just that. Inside this, a little head title, for example, welcome back. Then we'll be creating two more divs. One of them is going to be with the class socials. And below that, the other div is going to be with the class login form. Let's work on the socials first, because this is the place where we'll be needing the font of some. So the way one element here is going to look like is a div. This div is going to have the class socials element. And inside that, there will be a font of some icon. This is the way you integrate a font of some icon, is by an I tag. And then FA brands is the class that font of some provides. And FA Pinterest is the Pinterest icon. I basically just copy this a few more times and change it to YouTube and etc, etc. Those icons already appeared. And if you're wondering about the styling, we do have some basic stylings here in our CSS. So just don't worry about that. We only have a font family set, a little bit of flexbox to basically align it to the center, an overflow hidden and color given, nothing too crazy. Now I close the socials up and we'll fill up the login form, then we'll move on to styling it. Let's create a div with the class login element. There's going to be a bunch of elements like this. They will yet again contain a font of some icon, and they will also contain an input element. This time is going to be of type email, and there will be a placeholder that you'd like to see before the user types into it. I'll copy this over one more time. This will be for the password, and the type here instead of email will be password. The placeholder will also be password. And just change the font of some icon as well. Below our two login elements, we still need two more elements. One of them is going to be a button. This will have the class login button. Just type in login there, and there will also be an h4. This will have an ID mobile sign up. This mobile sign up will be needed whenever you are on the mobile view. So this is the little text that I showed you. If you click on it, will switch to the sign up view. And I just typed in there, don't have an account yet. And that's basically it. Now we jump on to styling this separately, and then we'll come back to our HTML, and there are two more containers that we need to take care of. So in our CSS, let's just quickly style the container first. This container is going to have a different type of background color. Let's also give it a height of 70 viewport height units and an aspect ratio of 2.2. This will mean we won't have to put a width to it because it will be 2.2 times the height, or at least this is the aspect ratio basically. The border radius will be 15 pixels, just to round it a little. Let's give it a box shadow, and also I gave it display flex for it to be aligning the items in a row, and it will also use flexbox. And its position is going to be relative because it's going to hold absolute elements together. And if an element is absolutely positioned, then it will look at the next relative element as its parent, and it won't look at the body then, so we can control where it is positioned. Now let's style this sign in. It's going to have a width of 50% and a height of 100%. It will use display flex to enable flexbox properties, also align items center, justify content, space evenly, and then flex direction, column. Also, let's give it a transition here. Transition ease in out 1 second. We won't be defining what it will be applied to. That means by default it will have a transition applied to all of the properties that it has. It's starting to align in a column. As you can see, it's just a little bit overflowing, but that's why we have overflow hidden set on our body. Now let's style the socials. We'll say display flex, this will put them into a row, and we'll also say gap 15 pixels. Very simple. Now as for the socials, element, which basically is a div that's surrounding the little icons, I'll say height, this will be 6 viewport height units. It will have an aspect ratio of 1, that means the width will also be 6 viewport, width units, or at least it will act as a rectangle. Let's give it a background color and some border radius to round it. It will use flexbox, so display flex. Align the items to the center horizontally and vertically as well. With the justify content center, there we go. Its font size will be 30 pixels, and we'll also set a box shadow for this one. Actually, it's bugging me how it's not responsive yet, so let me just copy over some responsive queries. This is basically saying that below 1150 pixels, the scaling will go down to 0.7, and below, well, this is the pre-made tablet width, so 768 units, the scaling will go down even further. If I save, this will put it back here nicely. The forms still need a little bit of styling, or at least we can see it properly. Now let's style the login form. Its width will be 80%, with its height being 60%. It will use display flex just like before, flex direction, column, align items center to center them horizontally, and justify content space evenly. Space evenly will set them evenly spaced on the vertical axis this time, because remember, flex direction changes will change how the main and the secondary axis act in the flexbox, and also a gap of 10 pixels will be given there. As for each login element, I will say display flex yet again, align items center and justify content center, so it's basic flexbox. Gap of 10 pixels. Its width will be 100% to take up all the space, but its height is only going to be 75%. If all this flexbox is not understandable to you, you should probably go and watch our flexbox crash course. It's about 15 minutes long, and it will explain you probably all the elements in flexbox. So moving on with our input styling, its border is going to be 0 because there is a border by default, and I will reapply the border bottom along with some background color, and I will also say outline none. This will remove that ugly default outline that it has. Its width will be 75%, while its height is going to be 50%. Let's just give them some color and a little bit of font size, and also give them a little bit of box shadow and the border radius to round it a little bit. Now we need a little bit of styling for the login element, and inside the login element the I element, which means the font of some icon. And the way you change the size of those icons is simply by saying font size, and here I change it to 22 pixels. I also quickly changed the placeholder font size. Let's style the login button as well, and then we'll give all buttons a little bit of transition. Its width will be 70%, with the height being 20%. The border radius will simply be 40 pixels. It won't have a border, so border none. And finally give it some other values like background color, font size, and box shadow. Now let's give a little bit of transition to our elements. So I select the button, comma, this will select another element, the dot socials element, and I'll also select the A element. I will say cursor pointer. I'll copy this over, except I remove the A, and instead of cursor pointer, I'll apply a simple transition to these elements, and I'll also copy this over once again, and this time it will be button hover and also social elements hover. I'll simply apply a different type of box shadow. This will give them that little box shadow transition that you've seen at the startup. There we go. If I hover over them, it's a nice sleek box shadow, even on the buttons. That's exactly what we wanted. And before we move on to writing more HTML, I'll also create another class. This will be the hidden class. This class will be used from our JavaScript as well, so it's going to use transition ease in out 2 seconds, and opacity will be set to 0. This will simply hide the element wherever we give it. And now below our sign in div, I will simply create another div. This div will be with the class sign up holder. This will be the orange element that will go back and forth. We'll create an age one here. This is very creative. We give it an ID so we can later access it from our JavaScript. It will be the holder age one. We welcome our people to our site. Great. And then just copy this over, except make this an age3. Also change the ID to be holder age3 and give it a different type of text inside. Also create a button below, give it some text inside, and the class for this, or sorry, not the class, there will be an ID for this, which will be sign up button. Now let's move on to styling our sign up holder. First of all, its position is going to be absolute. This will let us move it around with JavaScript as well and apply the left 50% property. Let's give it a basic background, and then after that, also apply a linear gradient background. Its width will be 50%, with its height being 100%, and to make it the shape that it actually was, we'll apply some border radius. Now these border radiuses, the first one is the top left, then the bottom left. Those are rounded, and then the top right radius and the bottom right radius. You see what it does? The only problem is that I applied it to the hidden class all along, so I'll just cut this from here. Give it display flex and the flex direction of type column. Also justify to the center and align to the center. Let's just simply give it a color and the Z index so it appears above the elements. Now let's style the button inside the sign up holder. Its width will be 50%, its height will be 10%. Let's give it a bit of border radius, disable its border, and also give it a color, and also give it a little bit of background color and font size. I'll copy this selector over, but instead we'll be selecting the H3, its width will be 80%, text align, center, pretty simple, and then a margin bottom of 10%. Now that we're done with that, let me just give here two more classes. These will be the switched and unswitched class. These will be dynamically applied. They have a transition, and this transition is going to apply both to the border radius changes, which are basically just opposites here, and there will also be a translate x 0% and translate x minus 100%. This will make the movement go left and right. It's pretty simple, but we'll be applying this dynamically from our JavaScript. Also copy over the sign in to the bottom. You can copy this over from the top, and then this will be the same, except here I won't say sign in, I say sign up. So this will apply to the sign up that we'll create later, just a minute. And we'll also create some IDs, ID stylings, mobile sign up. Remember, these are the little text, so it's going to have a text decoration underline. The text underline offset will be 3 pixels with the display being none. This is so it's hidden by default. And let's just copy this over. Here, this will be the sign in instead of the sign up. So they are both hidden, and that's perfectly fine because we assume that the user will use it from desktop first. And then when it's a mobile view, we'll just re-enable it. So let's write another media query. Media screen. We'll switch to the mobile view when we are below 725 pixels, and I'll style the container. Its flex direction will be set to a column instead of a row. We'll say justify content center and align items center. Let's give it a little bit of margins, 0 on the top and the bottom, but 10% on the sides, and its width will be 100%. As for the sign up holder, let's just fully disable it, so display none. As for the sign in, its width will be 100%, and for both the mobile sign up and mobile sign in, their display will be flex. And now before we move on to our JavaScript, let's create our HTML. So let's create a container with the class sign up. It will also have the ID sign up. Let's just create an age one in there. And below that, I will just copy this over from our top, and also I added two more extra elements in here, or sorry, one more extra element. We are using the styling from our login form, so it basically looks the same. There will be just a password again, and these are the stylings, except here it's a sign in, and this is basically how it should look like. But we won't be seeing this unless I give a switched class to the sign up holder. So now you can see that this is how it will look like, but I do not want this to be seen by default, so I just give it the hidden class. This will hide it, and then I remove the switch class from the sign up holder. And now we can start moving on to our JavaScript. In our JavaScript, I will start off by getting some elements by their IDs. They will be stored in global variables. So here we are getting the sign up button, the sign up holder, sign in, sign up, holder h1, holder h3, mobile sign up and mobile sign in. These are the two texts. These are the h1 and h3 elements inside the orange element. The sign up and sign in are the whole containers, and the sign up button and sign up holder. You can also find those elements in our HTML. So I basically just get them by their IDs, except here we've used the query selector for the sign up holder. And for this sign up button, we'll start by giving an event listener with the add event listener. We are listening for the click event, and we'll also pass in here a function that's going to be executed whenever the button is clicked. And inside this function, I'll create an if statement. In this if statement, we check if the sign up holder.classList.contains. So if the sign up holder does have the unswitched class, or we are also checking if we are clicking it for the first time, if the sign up holder, I'll just copy this over. Sign up holder does not contain, here we are saying does not, so we are inverting it from true to false. If it does not contain the switched class, and by default it won't be containing the switched class, that's why this check is important. If any of these conditions are true, then we'll say I'll copy the sign up holder.classList, and I'll say sign up holder.classList.remove, and we're removing the unswitched class. I'll copy this and do the same, but except we are here adding the switched class, so it will go to the left side. And if you give this a shot now, it's working, it's animating to the left side, but we still need to change the text and also make the elements here reappear. To solve the reappearance problem, we'll say sign up.classList.remove. We're removing the hidden class from the class list. I'll copy this over and change the sign up to the sign in, and we're adding the hidden class to the sign in. We are also dynamically going to change the text, so the holder h1 text will be set to something different. The way you do it is by saying holder h1.innerHTML and then set the text. Already have an account, and I'll do the same except for the holder h3, and I'll say set a different type of text in here. And one more change, we do need to change the sign up button.innerHTML to be equal to the sign in instead. If we give this a shot now, it will smoothly reappear. The already have an account is there, so we can sign in. All we have to do now is send it back and hide the sign up again, and this will be done in an else statement here. I'll copy all of this from above down to the else statement, and here we are going to invert this. Here, instead of removing the unswitched, we remove the switched and add the unswitched back. Here, instead of removing from the sign up, we are removing from the sign in, and we are adding back to the sign up. And as for the other ones, I simply set a different text. You can choose your text here. For example, I set it back to welcome to our site. If you are new, blah, 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 and then the sign up. If we give this a shot now, this was already working, and if I click it back, it's working just as fine. Great, so our desktop view is perfectly fine, it's working, and now we need to deal with the mobile view. Now I've grabbed here the mobile view, and you can see that it's looking a little bit off. It's a little small. That's because I forgot to add this selector here, the sign up selector, and what this sign up selector will do is set the width to 100%, but its display will also be none, which means it's getting out of the DOM flow. The other sign-in page has space to fit in. That's great, we can jump to our JavaScript now. Here we'll be writing some selectors. So for example, the mobile sign up dot add event listener. We are listening for the click event. Let's pass in here a function. So whenever that little text, the I don't have an account yet, is clicked, we'll set the sign in dot style dot display to be equal to none. And we'll do the same for the sign up, except here sign up dot style dot display, this will be set to flex. And not only that, but from up here I'm also going to copy over this toggling of the hidden class. So the signup.classlist.remove hidden and the sign in, there we simply give the hidden class, and I'll copy this over. Here I'll just change up everything that sign up should be sign in. With Ctrl D on Windows, I selected the ins and I changed them to be up, and then yet again select one. With Ctrl D you can select the next up. I'll change this to sign in, and this should be working now. So if I try it out, if I click this don't have an account yet right here, then it should change me to the sign up. That's working perfectly. Then I do this again, it goes back to welcome back. So now we have a working animated login page. It's working on the desktop, working on the mobile. If something is not understandable about the code, the CSS, the JavaScript, the HTML, feel free to comment down below. Also feel free to comment down below what would you like to see next. And if you found value in this video and would like to see more, please consider giving us a like, maybe even subscribe. And other than that, I hope to see you in the next one. Happy coding and God bless.